Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Benjamin, and welcome to another GameMaker tutorial. Today you're going to be happy because I finally am doing the 3D Magic RPG series again. I apologize for the long break. I've just been very busy on the weekends, which is when I do this series, and I haven't had time to get to it. So I wanted to make sure I did it this weekend though. Let's get started. Reading through the comments, the majority of you seem to ask for different spells for the next section, the next part of the series. And I thought that was a good idea, that I could show you a couple different spells and techniques for doing different spells. The first one I want to do, in fact probably the only one in this video because it's going to be more complicated, is I want to do a laser beam type spell where the beam will only go as far as it possibly can before it hits an enemy or maybe is outside the room. I don't know. We'll look at that in just a minute. So first thing we're going to do is let's create a new sprite, and we'll call this sprite we could just call it beam spell maybe. Beam spell. I'm going to edit the sprite, and we'll give it a width of 4 pixels and a height of 4 pixels as well, I guess. It's really tiny. And then I'm going to, what color should it be? Purple maybe? I'm going to go across with this lighter purple, and then I'm going to grab a darker, a little bit more faded purple and go like this. Okay, we'll just see what that looks like, and then I'm going to not center the origin, but I will center the Y. So do 4 or 2 on the Y, but leave the X at 0. Okay. Now let's see, object ice spell button. Let's duplicate this. We'll call this object beam spell button and go into it, and the spell is going to be object beam spell, which we haven't created yet, and the image blend is going to be C purple. Is that well, let's see, fuchsia maybe. We'll just try that. Okay, so we've created the button now. Pretty easy. Now let's create the actual beam spell. We'll call this object beam spell, and we'll give it that sprite that we had there. Looking good so far. Now we'll go into our spells room, and we'll go to the objects. We'll add the beam spell button to the room, and let's look at how the player actually creates the spells. I just need a refresher because it's been so long. Control the player. Instance create global.spell. Well, this seems like the type of spell that doesn't have a cooldown. Well, it does have a cooldown, but you can just fire it for a long time until you run out of mana, and then you have to wait for your mana to charge before you can kind of fire it again. So let's look at how we can do this in the best way with our current code. The spell cost where do we actually reset the alarm? Is that inside the spells? Let's look at the actual ice spell. Yeah, we reset the alarm in here. That looks pretty good, I guess. Okay, so I'm just thinking ahead a little bit. So we can have the beam spell. Let's bring it up here by the ice spell. And it needs to use... It doesn't need to have a parent because it's going to be pretty unique compared to the other spells. So we'll use it. We'll give it a damage. Initialize the beam spell. So we'll give it a damage equals 0.15 maybe. And let's see, global dot spell cost. So the spell cost must be set in here, right? Where's the spell cost set? I would think it'd be in our buttons. But it appears that it's not. Is it in the spells somehow? Do both of our spells currently cost the same amount? The ones that we have? That's what I think is happening here. Where did we store the globals in the player's stats? Global.spell cost equals 1. Okay, so what we've done here is we've forgotten to modify the spell cost. So come into the button parent, and we're going to create a variable called spell cost in here. Set it equal to 1. And then when we click on this button, we're going to set global.spell cost equal to spell cost. Spell cost. There we go. And let's go into our ice spell, because this one we want it to have a higher spell cost. So spell cost equals 2 for the ice spell. And inside of the beam spell, I'm going to set spell cost back to 1. Spell cost equals 1. There we go. Now when we select the button from the spell menu, or we select our spell from the spell menu, it's going to set our global spell cost. And so when we fire the spell, it will subtract that amount from the global mana. So that's what we needed to do. Okay, and then this isn't going to set an alarm. Yeah. Technically, we don't really need an object here. It's kind of just a hassle to do an object, actually. Let's just get rid of our beam spell object. And go back to our beam spell button. Okay. You can see we're setting spell equal to object beam spell. Let's do something tricky here. We'll make it a string. Just a string called beam spell. Lowercase with a space like that. And I'm going to copy this. And we're going to go back to our player. And we need to make our player smart so that it knows how to handle a string. Let's see, where's the player? Here we go. Go into the step event. So it'll give us an error if we try and create a spell that's a string. It's gonna, well, it might actually create something. I don't know, but it's not gonna be good. So what we need to do is we need to throw an if statement in here. If global.spell equals beam spell. Do a double equal sign here. Then we're going to do else initiate the create this spell. So we're doing a one-time case that's special to this spell because most spells are actually going to have an object, but this spell doesn't need one. It's kind of a special case, so it doesn't need to fit into our normal mold here. And we could make it that way, but it just doesn't make as much sense to do it that way. So now we need to actually we might need to throw this in a draw event. We might have to create a new variable for the player if we do it this way. I'm just thinking, so we have to be able to draw the spell, and we can't draw the spell inside of the step event. We have to do that in a draw event. So we could create a variable here that turns on like beam spell equals true, and we set it equal to true inside of here in this very specific case. But if it's not equal to true, and then in the draw event, if it's equal to true, we draw the beam spell. That seems like the most straightforward way to do it. It's not, I don't know if it's necessarily the best way, but let's just do that. Beam spell equals false. And we're just gonna throw this right before our mouse check right here. Beam spell equals false. And then inside of here, we're going to do beam spell equals true in this very rare case where it actually is true. And this feels a little bit bloated, but that's okay. We'll survive. Add event. Let's see. Draw event. Draw the player. Draw self. Draw the beam spell. If beam spell equals true, or you could just we could just leave it like this. Then we need to draw the beam spell. Okay, this is the fun part where we actually draw the spell and have it smart enough to collide with enemies and stuff like that. So this is the trickiest part of this spell. So we're gonna do while we're gonna create a temporary variable here called var len, which equals length, and we're gonna set it equal to 0. While len is less than 100. So the beam spell is going to have a maximum distance of 100 for now. Well, we could call this var max len equals 100. And just use max len right here. This might have been easier to do with an object now that I switched clear back to this method, but that's okay. This will work too. Well, len is less than max len. And not position, not place meeting. can't use place meeting for this one because place meeting uses the sprite of the object that's calling it. So we want to do, I think position meeting doesn't use the sprite. A single point in the room for an instance or object. Yeah, position meeting is what we want to use here in this case, so that it doesn't use the sprite of our object. Place meeting will put your, basically it just puts your object in that place to see if there's a collision. Position meetings checks that specific pixel basically to see if there's a collision, and that's the difference between the two. So we're gonna do well, we need to check using, we have to do x plus length dir x, y plus length dir y, and then the object that we're looking for, which is just going to be object enemy rat for now. You'll want to throw this in a parent to check for a parent object so you can get all enemies. Okay, so we've got 2 here. The length is going to be length, and the direction is going to be, how does the player's direction work? Oh, I might be able to do image angle actually. Yeah, because that stores the direction our player's facing. So length, image angle here. So length dir y and length dir x turn a length and an angle into an x and a y coordinate, because position meeting takes an x position and a y position, but we don't know those positions. We only know the distance and the direction, and so we're using length dir x and length dir y to turn our distance and direction into x and y coordinates. And the reason we're using x plus and y plus here is because that makes it relative to our current position. So we should just be able to length plus equals four. But first, we want to draw the sprite. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. There we go. Okay, now we want to draw our sprite. Draw sprite ext, and we're going to do sprite beam spell. Just down here at the bottom. Oops. Beam spell. We're going to do subimage 0. That doesn't matter. Okay, so we have an x and a y, so we need to do this right here. The x position that we did up there, and the y position that we did up here. Perfect. And then we need to do an x scale, which is just 1, y scale is 1, rotation is image angle, which is the player's image angle. Color is C white, and alpha is 1. Okay, I'm not sure this is gonna work, so we're just gonna have to test it and find out, because I don't know. So what we're doing is we're stepping through each position. We're adding 4 pixels. So we're kind of, imagine it this way, we're stepping along an angle 4 pixels at a time to check for a collision. When we find that collision, we stop. But until we run into that collision, or our maximum length, which is 100, then we continue to step along that position and draw a new sprite at each place. So let's test this, see if it works. Start the game. if global.spell equals beam spell, invalid comparison type. That is an error that I have never gotten before. If global.spell equals beam spell. Is it mad at me because let's try something here. See if this gets rid of the error. Object beam spell. We'll create our object beam spell, but it's never actually going to be created in the game. So let's try this. I think that error meant that, I don't know, that's interesting. That's the weirdest error I've ever seen. Okay, let's do, instead of beam spell, let's do object beam spell again. And let's go to the beam spell button and switch this to object beam spell. So we're creating a dummy object that's never actually going to exist. We're just using it for the comparison because apparently it doesn't like the fact that I'm comparing an object with a string. Yeah, that's true. That got rid of the error. So I guess if you have an object, you can't compare it with a string and see if they're equal. It doesn't like that comparison. So okay, we've got our fire spell currently. Let's switch to our beam spell. Whoa! Drains the mana, that's for sure. And doesn't draw anything. Oh, we got a nice little error message too. Variable get object damage flash in step event for object player. Wait, step event object player for object enemy rat. Object damage flash. What? Did I accidentally delete one of the other objects that I had? Dang it. I think I did. Well, you guys probably have that object, but I clearly don't right now. So I'm just going to comment this out and add that object back in later. It's just a flash object, but I don't want to waste you guys' time because I'm sure I added it in the other videos. So let's look and see why we're not drawing. The spell. So length is equal to 0. And, oh, let's see. This should be not position meeting. That's why. We want to check if there's not a rat there. If there's not a rat there, then we continue to draw this thing. If there is a rat there, then we stop. That's why it wasn't drawing it. Let's see if it works now. Okay, let's switch to this. Okay. Draws that beam, which looks kind of weird in this game. But let's find some rats and see what happens. 100's kind of a small length for this beam. Okay. So you can see as the rat gets closer to us, the beam gets... Achoo! Ah, sorry. As the rat gets closer to us, the beam gets shorter. And it will only draw... It doesn't damage the rat at all right now. We can fix that. But that's interesting, right? It actually works. It gets smaller as the rat gets closer to us. Let's change the length of the maximum length, because 100 is kind of small. Let's try 512 and see what happens. We'll be able to snipe these rats from clear across the room now. It'd also be good to create some particles, probably along the line of the beam. I think that would look cool. Oh my gosh, that is so cool looking. It doesn't really match this game though, unfortunately. But I did want to teach you guys how to do that. Okay, let's try and add in the damage now. So let's see, go into the player here. Let's throw it in this event. So we'll do if instance place and position. Place probably uses the sprite again and position doesn't. That's what I'm guessing. Yeah, instance, we need instance position instead of place. That way we just get the exact pixel location. And then we're going to copy these right here because this is the X and Y coordinate that we're going to use. And then we're going to do object enemy rat. I wish GameMaker would let me do a check at the same time. Let's see, why do I have... Oh, I need an extra parentheses, I'm missing one. Because it'd be nice if I could do... I guess I could do it this way probably, where I do var hit equals that, and then if hit, then we already have a reference to hit, so we can do hit.hp minus equals 0.15 or whatever. We originally had a damage inside the object, but where's the rat? Rats have 5 health, so we probably actually want it to do more damage than that. Let's go into here and we'll do 0.5 maybe. So basically we're saying, are we hitting a rat? If we are hitting a rat, then subtract, minus equals, subtract 0.5 from the rat's hit points. And 0.5 doesn't seem like a lot, but it's going to do it every single step. So it's going to be really fast. That's going to take from those poor little rats' HP. So let's see if that works. Yep. Looks like we can kill a rat that way. Dang, you can just snipe them. And it sure does drain the mana fast though. Okay, well, we added a new spell into the game. That's probably all we're gonna do for today. Well, yeah, that's all we're gonna do for today. I do want to add more to this spell to make it look more magical, because it looks not very magical right now. One thing we could do is make it a little wider real quick. Let's transform, resize canvas, change the height, because the height is actually how wide it is. Make the height 8. Whoa, not 80. 8. And then come into here and we're going to grab this like this and make it just a little wider. And that might make it look, you'll want to change the Y to 4 now. And you can see that this makes this, I really hope this is going to look a little better. And I think that personally looks a little better. And we can do more to make it look even better in the next one. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. Be sure and like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps me when you share my videos on Twitter as well. I love to see that. So stay tuned. I will be doing more tutorial videos next week, and also next week I will be streaming quite a bit. So make sure and follow my Twitch account. There's a link down in the description, and I will talk to you guys later.